Have you ever seen what a rat's burrow looks like in the wild? Well, maybe you're not a big fan of rats. Maybe you even find them gross, especially the ones living in the sewers of your city. But out in nature, these little creatures are far more useful than most people think. Now, would you believe me if I told you that wild rats might actually help you find precious gemstones? That's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's video. And you'll also learn how much a gemstone found in nature can actually be worth. So you'll never be left wondering whether that colorful little stone you picked up could be worth a fortune or not. Of course, it's not as simple as it sounds, but if you watch this video all the way through, you'll understand the entire logic behind how this is even possible. And if you've ever spent time outdoors or studied biology, you probably already know that armadillos, moles, and certain rodents like rats dig tunnels in the ground. In some cases, they can go more than 20 feet deep. Just to give you an idea, this is what their nests actually look like in the wild. And to build them, these tiny creatures have to bring all the material from underground up to the surface, creating tunnels where they can move around and, well, do rat things, like reproduce, safely hidden from predators. But here's what most people don't realize. During this digging process, these animals sometimes end up bringing gemstones to the surface. In other words, instead of using expensive machines, maps, or technology, there's a more natural way to analyze the soil. Many rock fragments that have been buried for thousands of years, the kind you'd normally need scanners or drills to reach, are brought up to the surface by these small diggers. And in certain regions, these fragments can contain valuable clues about the presence of diamonds, tourmalines, garnets, and other minerals that only form in very specific geological conditions. Of course, these animals aren't out there looking for precious stones, but unknowingly they're revealing underground layers that would normally be completely out of reach unless you had heavy machinery or costly drilling equipment. And that's exactly where the secret lies. If you know how to read the signs left behind by these natural excavators, you might just stumble across something rare without digging a single inch. And before anyone asks, no, the idea here isn't to disturb or harm any animals. Quite the opposite. This is about understanding how nature itself can work in your favor without harming any habitats. In fact, many of these burrows are dug and later abandoned, which means you can explore them carefully and always with respect for the wildlife that lives there. And that's where the magic starts to happen. So get ready, because in today's video, we're going to show you how to follow nature's clues to uncover gemstones, and what you should look for when you come across a burrow or a fresh mound of dirt in your path. Now, before you go wandering through the forest looking for burrows or holes in the ground, there's a secret that many experienced prospectors already know, and that you're about to learn. To give you an idea, this secret is so powerful that once you understand it, you can find precious gemstones almost anywhere in the world, even in places where there are no animals, like the ones we've talked about in this video. Because this is the real starting point for anyone who's serious about becoming a gemstone hunter. So what's the first thing you need to do? You need to learn how to identify something called indicator minerals. Because if you find one of these, whether it's along a riverbank, on a hillside, or even at the entrance of a burrow, your chances of discovering valuable gemstones skyrocket. These minerals act like arrows pointing toward a hidden deposit. And the best part? They're way easier to find than a diamond or a sapphire, for example. And there's a very clear reason for that. Imagine you're walking through the woods and you start seeing a lot of bees buzzing around a tree. You don't see the hive, but you know it's nearby, because bees tend to gather close to it. That's exactly how indicator minerals work. You might not see a diamond with your own eyes, but if you spot certain heavy minerals like garnet, ilmenite, or chromite, you can bet you're getting close to the source. And here's why. All of these minerals, garnet, ilmenite, chromite, are formed under the same extreme conditions of heat and pressure as diamonds. That means they originate from the same geological environment, deep in the Earth's mantle, and reach the surface the same way, carried up by ancient volcanic eruptions through rocks called kimberlites or lamproites. The big difference is that diamonds require even more specific conditions to form, much higher pressure and extremely pure carbon. Indicator minerals, on the other hand, form much more easily and in much larger quantities. In other words, they're more abundant. And that's why, in practice, they're a lot easier to find, especially for beginners just starting their gemstone journey. It's like nature is leaving clues all along the trail. You might not spot the diamond right away, but if you can read the signs, you'll know you're getting warmer. In short, if you learn to recognize those clues, the way someone might notice bees before finding the hive, your chances of uncovering something valuable increase dramatically. Because while most people are searching for the treasure, the smart ones like you are following the map that leads to it. Let's start with one of the most reliable and easiest minerals to identify, especially when it comes to searching for gemstones in the wild. I'm talking about garnet, that beautiful little red stone, and more specifically, the pyrope variety, which usually appears in tiny round grains like the ones you're seeing here. This mineral is a true classic among diamond indicators, well known by seasoned prospectors. Its color ranges from deep red to purplish brown, and in some cases it can show more intense shades that resemble wine or even a subtle metallic sheen when exposed to light. It's heavier than it looks, very dense, and when found in rivers, it often takes on a rounded, faceted, or even slightly cubic shape. Here's an interesting detail. Running water tends to polish these stones over time, so if you come across one with a soft luster and an unusual shape, hang on, it could be your first big clue. Now here's a fun fact. Have you ever seen a black stone with a metallic shine, almost like a piece of polished iron? That might be ilmenite. This mineral is a solid indicator that you're in gemstone territory. Its color usually ranges from black to dark gray, and its texture can be smooth with flat surfaces. Ilmenite has a hardness of 6 on the Mohs scale, which means you can test it with a piece of quartz. If it scratches easily, it's not a diamond. But it is a great sign you might be near a kimberlite pipe. And if you're lucky, you might even find some grains of ilmenite settled at the bottom of your pan, especially in areas with volcanic history. Here's a tip you'll want to remember. There's one mineral that many seasoned river prospectors call the secret indicator. It's heavy, dark, opaque, and noticeably denser than most of the rocks around it. That mineral is chromite. It might not stand out at first glance, but if you know what to look for, it can become your greatest ally. Chromite has a more rugged texture than ilmenite. Sometimes it even looks like a chunk of old lead, and its surface doesn't reflect much light. But trust me, if you find chromite in river gravel, especially in eroded zones or near ultramafic rocks, you're in the right spot. You could be close to diamonds, garnets, or even spinels. And here's the most fascinating part. These three minerals, garnet, ilmenite, and chromite, often appear together. So if you find 2 or even all 3 in one area, it could mean you're standing right above a hidden deposit of precious gemstones like diamonds. Because once you learn how to recognize these signs, it becomes a lot easier to tell if you're just digging through ordinary gravel, or if you found something that's really worth investigating. Now, just knowing this would already be enough to start finding gemstones almost anywhere in the world. And honestly, we could end the video right here. But when science starts paying closer attention to how nature works, everything changes. Why? Because in many regions, those indicator minerals we talked about aren't lying out in the open. They're buried beneath layers of soil, gravel, and ordinary sand, far from plain sight. And that's exactly where our little digging friends come into play. Every time these animals need to reproduce or escape predators, they dig burrows into the ground. And some of those tunnels go surprisingly deep. All that dirt and material they remove to make their nest has to go somewhere, right? Well, that's exactly what happened in 2013, when a team of researchers from the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization in Australia stumbled upon something completely unexpected. They were studying remote areas to track traces of gold and deep earth minerals, trying to understand why those substances were showing up in places where there had been no recent human digging. And that's when they made a surprising discovery. Most of the samples they were analyzing weren't coming from drilling equipment. They were coming from animal burrows, tunnels, and mounds. At first, their focus was on termite mounds, which we talked about in the last video. But soon the scientists noticed that small mammals, especially native rodents that dig deep nests, were doing something very similar. Some of their tunnels reached as deep as 7 meters or over 20 feet underground. And here's the jaw-dropping part. In the sediments brought up by those animals, the scientists began finding clear traces of indicator minerals, like pyrrhic garnet, ilmenite, and even fragments of kimberlite. It was as if nature itself had taken over the role of a geologist, bringing deep earth samples to the surface, without the need for industrial drills or expensive excavations. That same phenomenon was later studied in the United States. Researchers connected to the U.S. Geological Survey began monitoring areas with known kimberlite activity, especially in the southern states. In places like Arkansas and parts of Texas, they studied the behavior of armadillos, particularly the nine-banded armadillo, or Dasypus novemcinctus, and found that these animals could easily dig to depths of 2 meters. In softer soil, some were even reaching 5 or 6 meters deep. So what does this mean in practice? It means that all this digging effort creates what geologists call a natural sample zone, meaning the material those animals bring to the surface can include deep rock fragments, heavy minerals, even volcanic gravel from ancient eruptions, all deposited neatly around those abandoned burrows. Now we've reached the most important part of the video, the one I promised you at the beginning. How much could a gemstone found in nature actually be worth? And more importantly, could that colorful little rock you picked up be worth a fortune? Take a look at this burrow. It was probably made just a few weeks ago. You don't need to dig to the bottom. What really matters is the loose material piled up right at the entrance. So what exactly should you be looking for when you find a burrow or mound of earth? At this point, your job is to look closely for fragments of the indicator minerals we talked about earlier in the video. For example, if you spot bits of kimberlite, ilmenite, or chromite, your chances of finding diamonds are pretty good. If you see signs of pegmatite, that could mean you're close to emeralds or tourmalines, because the natural samples brought to the surface by these digging animals don't point to just one type of gem. They can actually hint at an entire variety, depending on the geology of the region. That's why it's also crucial to understand the local terrain where you're searching. Let's say, for instance, you're exploring the western part of Montana, southern Colorado, or specific areas in Arizona. You might come across garnets, and not just as indicator minerals, but as actual gemstones that can be cut and sold. Some garnets with rich red or orange tones can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars per carat if they're well formed. Take a look at the one on your screen right now. That's a garnet. Not quite as valuable as a diamond, but it can range from $200 to $5,000 per carat when cut. And here's the thing. Garnets are far easier to find than diamonds, simply because they're more abundant in nature. That alone makes them worth the effort. Now, in older volcanic regions like New Mexico and parts of California, you might come across fragments of spinel. You're seeing one on your screen right now. This is a raw specimen. Some spinels are so similar to rubies that they've fooled even expert gemologists. And even in rough form, they can fetch anywhere from $200 to over $1,200 per carat, depending on size and quality. In states with known alluvial deposits such as North Carolina and Idaho, these natural mounds can also reveal traces of sapphires or rubies, especially in areas shaped by ancient erosion. These gems might appear as small, dense, shiny stones that are hard to identify with an untrained eye. But with the right knowledge, they can be worth anywhere from $100 to $10,000 per carat. Now, let's say you get really lucky and find diamonds. Could that actually happen to you? Well, yes, diamonds are rare, but they're not out of reach. If you know what to look for and you're searching in the right places, your odds of finding a diamond worth over $1 million might actually be better than winning the lottery. In the U.S., the most promising spots include the state of Arkansas, especially around the Crater of Diamonds State Park, and parts of Wyoming, where geologic formations are tied to kimberlite and lemproit. In many of these areas, researchers have already observed armadillo and rodent burrows containing pyrrhic garnet, ilmenite, and even small kimberlite nodules, the exact signs that typically appear before a diamond is uncovered. Here's the key takeaway. Even if you don't see a diamond right away, those minerals it leaves behind are like footprints from a rare animal. If you know how to follow them, they can lead you to something that changes your life forever. Just to give you an idea, a single gem quality diamond can range from $5,000 to $100,000 per carat, depending on its clarity, color, and size. And if it's a rare colored diamond, like vivid blue, pink, or deep yellow, the value can be essentially limitless, depending only on what someone's willing to pay. That's how some single stones have been sold for over $100 million. Now, of course, not every diamond found in nature is going to be worth that. Most are far less valuable, dark, full of inclusions, or with a dull surface. These are known as industrial diamonds, and they might only go for $20 to $50 per carat. But here's a secret that almost no one tells you. If you found even a low-quality diamond, don't stop, because if there's one diamond in the area, even a rough one, chances are there could be others nearby, and one of them might just be worth a fortune. But how exactly can someone with no experience tell whether the gemstone they found is worth just a few cents or thousands of dollars per carat? Well, I couldn't let you finish this video without answering that question, because the truth is, the answer might be much simpler than you think. In fact, there's a very obvious logic behind identifying the potential of that little colorful stone you picked up in the wild. And it starts with one rule that most people completely ignore. It's not just about quantity, it's about quality and quantity. The first thing you need to understand is that the value of a gemstone is almost always calculated in US dollars per carat. 1 carat, just so we're clear, equals 200 milligrams, meaning you need 5 carats to make just 1 gram. That means even a tiny stone can be worth more than an entire piece of jewelry if it has exceptional qualities. And here's the key. There are 3 main characteristics that determine a gem's value: color, clarity, brilliance, and finally, size. All of these factors play a major role in pricing. For example, a 2-carat diamond with high clarity and no visible inclusions can easily be worth over $20,000 per carat. But if that same diamond has internal flaws or looks cloudy, its value might drop to less than $100 per carat. And this doesn't apply only to diamonds. Rubies, sapphires, tourmalines, garnets, spinels, they all follow the same rule. A vibrant, clear, deep blue sapphire can reach over $3,000 per carat, while a dull one with visible flaws might not even be worth $10,000. Now that you understand how quality impacts the price, let's talk about size. Imagine you have 2 high-quality diamonds, each weighing 1 gram and valued at $5,000 apiece. That gives you $10,000 in total. But if you had just 1 diamond of the same quality weighing 2 grams, its price could easily jump to $50,000, 5 times more, simply because larger diamonds of that quality are much rarer and more valuable. That's why the first thing you need to learn is how to observe the small details in the gemstone you found. And here's a practical tip. The more translucent, brilliant, and intense the color, the higher its potential market value. If the stone is completely opaque or looks lifeless, it might still be an interesting mineral, but chances are it won't be worth much in the gem trade. But here's the catch. Before you even think about pricing a gemstone, you need to identify it first, because out of the dozens of gemstones that exist, how can you know what your stone actually is? The truth is, many gemstones look incredibly similar, and that can be very misleading. A classic example is zircon. In some cases, it looks a lot like a diamond, especially when it's clean and well-formed. But in terms of market value, it's like comparing sand to gold. And that is exactly where the danger lies. If you don't know how to identify your gemstones accurately, a shady buyer could take advantage of you. I've received messages from many subscribers who sold what they thought was just an ordinary pebble for a few cents, only to find out later that it was actually worth hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars. And the worst part? There's no way to undo that mistake. So before you go digging up molehills and rat holes on your land, or maybe even on your parents' property, keep this in mind. Knowing how to identify your finds using simple, practical methods can be the difference between making a smart deal or missing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. That's exactly why I created the ebook Gemology Journey for Beginners. It's a no-fluff, easy-to-follow guide for anyone starting out but serious about learning. Inside, you'll find a complete step-by-step system to help you identify diamonds, tourmalines, rubies, garnets, zircons, and dozens of other stones. even if you've never studied geology before. And here's something special that many of you asked for in the comments. To celebrate our channel hitting 100,000 subscribers, the physical version of the ebook will be available on Amazon starting July 25th, featuring upgraded content, detailed new tests, and exclusive illustrations. But until then, you can grab the full digital version, lifetime access for under $10. That's right, normally $27, now just $9.99, exclusively for subscribers of this channel. Just click the first link in the description or check the pinned comment. And if you'd like to support the channel even more, you can now become a channel member. Today, I want to give a special shout out to our newest members, Angie T.S. and Linji Ru. Thank you so much for your support. As a member, you get early access to new videos, exclusive content, and your name featured in these shoutouts. But hey, if now's not the right time, no problem at all. You can still join us on this journey by simply subscribing and watching the next video, where we'll explore how to find other gemstones in the wild, some of which may be even more valuable than diamonds. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Good luck, Gem Hunter.